Hey everyone, it's Theo from Spectrum Gardening. So today we're going to be talking about grow lights and grow shelves. In the first half of the video, you're going to see us set up our grow shelf. Our grow shelf, we actually have two of them, but we're only going to set one up in the video, is set up for our commercial scale of selling seedlings. I'm going to reintegrate this a few times in the video. We do this on a commercial level. So we run 20 sunblaster lights all at the same time in our peak season. And we have, I think we can fit about 600 plants on both of their shelves at one time. So if you're a home grower, don't let this intimidate you though. In the second half of the video, we're going to be showing you how you can be growing, how there's a scenario that you can start your plants in very little floor space without having to invest a lot of money in a grow setup like what we did. Our grow setups didn't always look like this. I'm going to include a picture of our very first grow setup. And you know what? To this day, we still laugh at it. We really do. It was a good effort on our part. We went into that not really knowing too much about plants, not really knowing what was required by them, the light spectrum, how many lumens we needed or anything like that. We just said, oh, we're gonna grow some plants, let's grow them. So you'll see how rudimentary it is. But you know what? It gave us a very great start. It gave us a great start. It taught us of what we didn't, taught us what we were doing wrong. Pretty much. And I want to be saying this and again and again and again through the video. The two most important things about a grow setup is your soil and your lights. If you have those two things, everything else can kind of be fudged. So our grow setup looks very extensive now. We've invested quite a bit of money into it to get to this point because we sell plants on a commercial scale. But let's take a look at the first grow setup we had. So you can see from our first grow setup that we basically just took a door and we put it on top of a couple 2x4s and we put some lights under it, and then we put more 2x4s around it. And it was basically just like a hodgepodge thing put together. We had one sunblaster and the rest were fluorescent lights of like basically shop, like home grade or like shop light grade. Needless to say, we had a lot of loss in plants for two reasons. One, soil, and two, the lights. It came to a point that I basically took the tomatoes I was growing and they were dying inside. I said, you know what? I'm just gonna stick them outside. They're gonna have a better chance of growing outside than they will be growing inside. So our major problem that year, the biggest one was the soil. We basically were using pure HP ProMix. It was ProMix, either HP or BX. So knowing now what we didn't know then, we kind of laugh at ourselves because ProMix doesn't contain any nutrients in it. It's just basically a sterile mix with no food for the plants. So while it's really good for the plants to start in, for the seed to start sprouting, you need to repot from it very quickly. We didn't do that. We were trying to grow solely in the ProMix. So that was one of our major issues. Our other major issue was we had lots and lots of light spillage and it was going every which way. Spillage, I mean like it wasn't directed at the plants. You can see behind me right now that our shelf is kind of wrapped in an emergency blanket, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the video. And I'm going to be talking more about our lights. And it's all done in a way to direct all the light, as much light as possible, toward the plant. That's the whole reason for it. We've kind of learnt of what we needed not to do. So this video is all going to be about the grow shelf, kind of what we do with it, and then we're going to be covering what you can be doing with a small space or let's say a smaller home grower budget. We're not going to be covering soil in this topic in this video. That topic we're going to be saving for our next video. So make sure to subscribe and like our videos. The shelves that we use to grow on are these wire racks right behind me. They can be bought at Canadian Tire, Costco, Rona, Home Depot, any home hardware, restaurant supply store, things like that. We got ours at Costco because there was honestly the best price and they were local to us. And we paid right around $90 each or so, and we've got 2 of them. They're super nice because we can have since they're basically just under 4 feet wide and 19 inches deep, we can have 4 trays per shelf full of plants, and we do about 4 or 5 shelves high, so we can fit a lot of plants on there. And they don't require any tools to assemble other than a hammer. The way that the shelves are built, they have these vertical metal pieces right here, and they have these metal clips that go around them, one on each side on there, and then one kind of clips on right on the opposite side. And then you just you put your metal shelf over it, which I'll show you later on, and you kind of bang it into place, and they're basically just held into place by pressure because these are bigger at the bottom than they are on the top. So let's get started. Honestly, these shelves are best built with 2 people, but they can easily be done with 1 person. I'll show you how. In the past years of using these racks, we found that the perfect height between the shelves is 16 inches. It gives us enough room for the plants to grow up and still not really kind of be unwieldy to handle, but also it helps us maximize how many shelves we can fit on each rack. Before we actually put our lights up, I'll be putting my pulley system up throughout the whole grow rack. I really like the pulley system because it enables me to quickly lower and raise my lights depending on how big my plants are without really spending too much time doing it myself. Before we used these, we would put wood, we'd put other trays, we'd pretty much put anything under our grow trays to raise them close to the lights. Now remember, the closer your plants are to the light, the less they're going to have to stretch to grow. So if you can keep your lights really close and compact, really close to your plant, you'll get a nice, compact, healthy plant. And these ones here, these ratchets, we ordered from Amazon. But you can get them from pretty much any local hydroponic store around you that sells growing supplies. Before I move on to the next step, I just want to show you why I like these pulleys so much. So you can see on that side that I've already lowered that part, and this one's still cranked to the top. The nice part about this, let's say I'm starting more seedlings over there, or let's say a different variety which is not growing so fast, I can lower that side of the light and still have this one higher and still not have to worry about burning my plants and still keep the lights nice and close so it's compact. So to lower them, there's a little switch, there's a little button on the pulley, and I just press that and it kind of just drops down with gravity. And to to raise them, just hold on to the pulley itself and just crank it right up. And it's so easy that it's almost a no-brainer to buy them. But if you're just a home grower, just doing it as a hobby, just stick something under your trays to bring them close to your lights. The thing is, we typically grow around 8 shelves full of plants, more or less. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8 shelves full of plants. To continually to raise and lower the lights, it's so labor intensive for us, so it made sense to invest in the pulleys. So now that I have my shelf built and I have my pulleys all hooked up to the shelf, I'm gonna put up my lights. But let's talk about grow lights for a second. There are so many different brands out there and there's so many different types, it can be overwhelming. I'm not gonna go into too much detail of all the differences in Kelvins and lumens and things like that, because that can be a totally different video. But I will say we really like sun blasters. We use the T5s with the nano reflector. When I say nano reflector, I mean this little part behind the light right here. This, when the light's hanging like this, it makes sure all the light is kind of directed downwards, exactly where you want it on your plant. And the nice thing is about the T5s is when you do have to switch out your fluorescence, they do have a LED replacement bulb. So these LEDs, these sun blasters, they run around 50, 60 bucks a piece, right around there, depending where you buy them from. All your hydroponic stores will carry them. Amazon carries them. Greenhouse supply, like nurseries, things like that, they carry them. I have found though that the hydroponic stores have the best price. If you go to a nursery like your local greenhouse nursery or something like that, they're going to be selling them a lot more. And yes, Amazon's convenient, but they do charge more. So typically, if you're only having 2 trays on each shelf, you can get away with just having 2 lights going across here and lower them down. That's going to be enough coverage for 2 trays. But most of the time we have 4 trays on each shelf. So what we found, what we needed is to get the spread of light that we need. We've got 3 lights that go across. 1 there, 1 here, and 1 there. And the nice thing about sun blasters also is that I can interlink them, meaning I can have one plugged into the power down there, and I can just basically link the rest off of the first one, and then control all the lights on one shelf with one switch. So then once it's all hooked up, each shelf can be individually controlled, and then when I hook up my second shelf, I can actually hook my second shelf into my first shelf. So all the horizontal shelves from the first rack to the second rack can be controlled all at the same time, but also independently. While we're nearing the end of building the shelf, I could just leave it like this and put it up against the wall and stick my trays and plants on it and call it a done deal. But I like to wrap my shelves. I wrap them with emergency blankets, basically Mylar blankets like that. They can be bought at Mountain Equipment Co-op. They can be bought at dollar stores. We ordered ours off Amazon because, amazingly enough, in the middle of winter, stores don't carry them. We've looked everywhere before. We've gone to dollar stores, gone to camping stores. Well, camping stores do carry them, but at such a high price point. They're pretty much disposable for us because after we're all done taping them, when we take them off, they get all ripped up. So we're not going to be wanting to spend a lot of money on them or anything like that. So we look basically for disposable, for ones that are the price point that if they are disposable, it's not going to affect us financially too much. Instead of wrapping your shelves with a Mylar emergency blanket, you can paint the wall behind your grow shelf, and beside it, you can paint it white. And that's going to help reflect all the light back onto your plant, back onto your grow shelf. Before we move on to the last step of the grow rack, I just wanted to show the difference between the shelves that have that are wrapped in the emergency blanket and the ones that are not. So this is the one that is wrapped, and you can see how bright it is, how instantaneously it lit up the space. Now let's check out the one that's not wrapped. The bottom half of the shelf is not wrapped yet because I wanted to show the difference. So you can see, while it's still bright, it's not that kind of blinding bright as the top half. One of the most overlooked things in a grow setup is the timer. Something like this. Mine is like a heavy duty pool timer. It's digital. If I can open that, let's see. There we go. It's digital. It can be easily programmed. It's got a reserve battery life. So once I plug it in, all my settings from last year are gonna come back. The reason timers are so great is because I can program it and walk away, and it's automatically gonna shut my lights off at a certain time. It's automatically gonna start them at a certain time. So I can make sure my plants are getting 14 or 16 hours of light without even lifting a finger myself. I just program it and then it's a done deal. However, don't get a cheap one. Don't get one that's like a dollar store quality or things like that. Don't be afraid to invest a little bit of money in it. The reason for that is because it needs to be able to handle all the electricity coming through your lights. I have 3 lights per shelf, and then I have 4 shelves going on right now. And then once I set up my other rack, I'll have another two lights per shelf and another four shelves there. So that's 20 lights times 54 watts, whatever the answer is. I'll put it in above my head. I'm not very good with math. So you want to make sure you're not going to be kind of overheating it and having a fire hazard in your house. So what I do with my grow setup is I plug my timer into the wall, and then I take the heaviest duty power bar I can find, because again, you don't want any fire hazards. You want to be able to do it all properly and just kind of sleep well at night. Then I take the power bar and I plug that into the timer, because right now I have 4 different levels of shelves with all with their own plugs, and it's not going to fit into this 2-plug timer, so I need a power bar. I plug the power bar in, and the power bar is controlled by the timer, and the timer goes into the wall. It's the most efficient way I've found to do it. It's quite simple once it's all set up. I know I've covered a lot of material, and I know, like, let's say if you're a home gardener or something like that, you don't need to invest that amount of money that we did. We spent so far timers, pulleys, lights, blankets, shelves, everything, heavy duty trays, short 2-inch humidity domes. We've probably spent about $2,000 on our grow setup. We're not home, even though we're actually growing everything right in our house. We grow all our plants in our house. We do about 800 to 1,200 plants out of 12 square feet of floor space each year. Even though we're doing it in our house, we're not home growers. We're doing it commercially. We sell these plants at farmers markets. We sell them online. So we need to make sure that we're having a good quality product to sell to people. We've invested around $2,000 to make sure that we have the right equipment. But if you're a home grower and you're just doing it as a hobby, the most important thing that you need to worry about is your lights and your soil. You can kind of fudge the times. You can kind of times that your lights are on. You can kind of flick them on, flick them off. The plants, they won't suffer too much per se, but you can kind of get away with it. I know a lot of people that just kind of turn the lights on when they wake up and turn them off when they go to bed. You can do that, that's fine. But for us, we start the plants while we're making raised beds for other people. So we get so busy, we don't necessarily have time to remember to flick them on and off. And then there's other times that we just forget. We just plainly forget to do it. And it's one less thing we have to worry about, that it's all on a timer. But I don't want our setup to intimidate you from going out and starting your own seeds. You know what? You can even start them in a windowsill in an old strawberry container if need be. I know a lot of people do. The reason we have this setup is so we can push out good quality, high quality product. I've talked about a lot of things about our grow setup. I've talked about the lights, the mylar blankets, I've talked about the pulleys, I've talked about the shelving unit. There's one thing I haven't talked about, and that's heat mats. We don't actually use any heat mats ourselves for a few different reasons. One of the reasons is because we have the pulley system. We're able to get our lights pretty much right close to the top of the dome, and then the heat from the lights, since we're not using LEDs right now, we're using T5s, the heat actually heats up the soil to keep the soil warm to help the germination rates. And one of the problems that I've seen and again with heat mats is since they go under the 1020 tray under here, I'm just going to pull this up real quick. Since they go under the tray, I've seen a lot of people leave their heat mats on while their plants are growing, and what that basically does is basically cooks the plants from the bottom up. The thing with heat mats is they're basically only used, they are only used to help germination, to help the soil keep warm. They're great for some varieties of seeds. Some varieties of seeds which need a lot of bottom heat to germinate, or that have a long germination period, or that are very hard to germinate, heat mats are great for it. We don't use them because we're able to generate the heat from the lamp, and we're able to drop them down so much to keep our soil warm. We kind of view heat mats as kind of a growing accessory, which is not really needed or anything like that. That being said, I know I said earlier that some varieties it is needed for. For the varieties that we grow, we don't use them and we don't need them. So we don't spend the money. A lot of home growers, a lot of people that I know, they're like, oh yeah, I love my heat lamp, things pop so quickly. My biggest question for them is, how close are your lights to your soil? If you have your lights all the way up here, yeah, of course you're not going to have any heat on the soil. But if you drop them down right on the top of your humidity domes like we do, we have very high and very quick germination rates. So whether you're using a heat mat or not, it's totally up to you. We don't use them, but you also have to look at how beneficial they are. Earlier in the video, you've seen how extensive our setup is. We have that type of setup because, as I explained earlier, we're commercial growers, we sell our plants, and we do it on a commercial scale. And we've invested quite a bit of money into our grow setup. But, if you're a home grower and you're only growing a few seedlings for yourself or for your family, you don't need to spend $2,000 on a grow setup like what we did. Don't tell my wife that though. Don't tell her I spent so much. It's still kind of a sore point with us. I have these two 1020 trays on my office window. And I'm going to come back to the Sunblaster light again. We really like this brand. One, they're extremely versatile lights. They're a great price point to get into, and let's say you do buy the T5 because you don't have a bigger budget to go full LED. You can swap the tubes out later on for LED replacement tubes, which we're going to be doing ourselves. But the Sunblaster company, not only do they make lights, but they make the quad ply trays we use, and they make these 7-inch humidity domes. In an earlier video, we talked about these domes, how we don't like them. We don't like them ourselves because we have pulleys that drop down our lights right down to above our 2-inch domes to keep them really close. But let's say you don't have the pulleys, it's not on your budget, you don't need an extensive setup like what we did, you just want to do a few plants, and you need a way to keep your lights kind of above your plants without the pulleys or without a setup like that, or without using chains. These 7-inch humidity domes, they have grooves in them. They have one groove going this way, here and there, and they have another groove going this way. So I have two 1020 trays lengthwise on my office window, and I'm going to take a 4-foot light one of the sun blasters we have. And it fits perfectly into the groove, as you can see. It's a little bit, yeah, there's a little bit of an overhang because these trays are only about 20 inches wide and 20 inches long, and the light's 4 foot. But if you only need 2 trays, this is a great way to elevate your plants. And the thing is, sun blasters, they come in a variety of sizes. They come in 18 inches, 24 inches, 36, 4 foot. We have 4 foot ones ourselves. But let's say you only have 1 or 2 trays that you're starting at home. You can take these humidity domes and plop it over. And I'll do a close up above the humidity domes in a moment after we finish this. But you can get a 2 foot lights, and you can run them this way and this way. So you can have 2 lights on your 1020 tray, and you can put another one the widthwise, so it's gonna be around 40 inches. Yeah, 20 inches, that's it. 20 inches. It's gonna be a little bit longer than 2 feet. But that way, let's say you, like as I say, you don't have the floor space, you don't have whatever set up. This is not taking up very much room at all. And let's say you don't even have this, floor space for this. You can just use one humidity dome like this, and you can just get 18-inch sun blaster, which is gonna plop right on top of there. And you know, it's by far the easiest way to start the seedlings. And it only takes 10 inches by 20 inches footprint off of your windowsill, or on your floor space, or on a tabletop for that matter. You don't have to have a lot of space to start seedlings. Sometimes you just have to get creative with it. So please don't be intimidated by the setup that we showed you that we have. Don't be intimidated to start your own seedlings at home. Let's say you don't even want to get the 1020 trays. Get a dome like this and get a sun blaster lamp and just throw it right over. Two of the most common mistakes I've seen with home growers, and with any growers, actually myself included, as I've discussed earlier in the video about our first setup, is they make a mistake on the soil and the lights. Those are the most 2 important things when you're starting your seedlings. Everything else can kind of be more or less forgiven. If you put them out too early, they can survive if you give them a little bit of shelter, or they can bounce back. But lights and soil starting inside is the 2 major things, 2 most important things. So now that I've shown you the different options that you can start seedlings inside, our elaborate, extensive, big budget setup versus a smaller footprint, smaller budget, less elaborate setup. If you have any questions or comments about that, make sure to throw them down below and I'll make sure to answer them. So our next video will be about starting soil. As I've reintegrated many times through this video, soil and lights are the most important things in starting seeds at home. I've made the mistake of not using correct soil and correct lights before. I've seen other people made the mistake of not using correct soil and correct lights before. So our next video is going to be focusing all on soil and how we make our soil, what we use to do it, and how we blend it. So don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our videos.